This is Optics EQ video race of the day for January 11th. We're going to look at race 2 from Gulfstream Park. We're not going to do a deep analysis horse by horse in this race. Rather, we're going to talk about why we selected the race, which, selecting races is a very important part of the handicapping process. And second, an approach for maybe wagering on the race or playing it in a contest. So what we do is we started with OptixSCAN for plot. And what OptixSCAN for plot does, it dumps all the races with the exception, it filters out races that are really undecipherable out of it. But all the races from the tracks that we have covered for that day. And it puts all the information in a table and it gives you all the plot kind of heading information with it. And you can filter on it. And what I like to do is I like to start with the plot fit. And I want a plot fit that's not red. And the way I do that, I want to kind of just filter out the reds, is you can see the little numbers next to each of the circles. And you see in the case of reds, it's either 2, 3, or 1. So anything greater than 3 is going to do the job here. And I filtered out all the red plot fits. Secondly, and the other simple thing that I like to do is make sure that Q change, you can see it's either a green circle or a red circle. I want to make sure they're all green circles. And what this means is that the standard filter and plot and surface and distance are the same. What I'm concerned about is, races where a lot of horses may be trying the turf for the first time and those two plots are very dissimilar. And I want to kind of avoid that. And this is the best way to do that. So by having the plot fit, non-red and the Q change of green, I feel comfortable that I'm getting a subset that I can work with. And you got to find that, it's just a matter of preferences. But this has worked for me in the past. So then I kind of just go down race by race and kind of evaluate these. I open up the plots, and you can easily open up a plot by double-clicking any one of them. And it opens up the plot. And this is Gulfstream Park Race 2. And what intrigued me about this particular race is just visually, there's so much contention in quadrant 1. You can see the flame there, up there in the heading, and visually you can see it. You got a bunch of circles basically on top of each other. And as you know, the circles, if you use plot before, the circles mean that the horse's late pace relative to the other horses is slower when it's a circle, right? The bigger the circle, the slower. So you can see a bunch of circles kind of on top of each other. So there's contention with horses that tend to, fall off. So that intrigued me. The next thing I do to just kind of evaluate and make sure that I'm looking at this right is I look at the run styles of the horses involved in that cluster. So the 2, 4, and 5 are all E types. That means they need the lead. You have a bunch of need the lead horses who are going to be on top of each other. And, if you kind of just think about it in terms of their post positions too, you're going to have the 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, there's the possibility that 2's got to go, and if they all go, the 4 and the 5, one of those could get caught wide. So it just could be a mess up front, could set it up for off the pace horse. So the next thing I want to do is just flip over the filter, surface, and distance to see if there's anything that kind of changes. And the one noticeable change was the 6. He went from a square in, kind of the middle of the quadrant to a circle in quadrant 4. And that's because he's not a turf horse, so this is a unique distance to him. But everything else kind of stays intact. You see that contention still there. So you got a race with a lot of early pace contention. And so how do we approach this race? Well, why did we select it is really the first thing. And yeah, it's contention, but what does that mean? Well, if you look at that contention, who's part of it? The 5, and you can see he's colored in green because his morning line is less than or equal to 3 to 1. He's 2.5 to 1 or 5 to 2. And the 2 is the second choice. So you got the favorite and the second choice, part of a very contentious early pace. To me, that kind of screams potential opportunity. So that's what we're looking for, especially if we're wagering on a race like this, and we're looking at this race as part of a pick 4 or pick 5, we might want to consider looking at the horses that are off the pace and maybe just spreading with them. And you can see in the case of the 1, 7, 8, and the 10, they're all big prices. The 9, not so much. And there's certain things about the 9 that we're not particularly enamored with. But, he is another off the pace horse you might want to consider and look at. But in this case, we would start our analysis with the 1, 7, 8, and 10. If you're playing, like I said, pick 4, pick 5, and this race has the potential, to blow it up if one of those wins. So maybe you just spread with those and try to beat the favorite. If you're playing a contest, you kind of want to look at other things. Which of these horses is fast enough? Which of these horses is in good form? That's where you can use Optix Notes and Optix Figs. I will tell you from Optix Fig range, the 1, 7, 8, and 10 are viable. So that that's the case. If you're looking to play vertically, the one thing I would consider is if you're looking at this race, again, you might want to reevaluate some of the speeds. Just because they don't win doesn't mean they can't finish in the money. Some of those need the lead horses. Typically if they don't get the lead, they usually don't end up in the money. But this is a 5 furlong sprint. It's a very short distance, so you might want to just look at that and consider that. But I really be focused on off the pace. So the reason we selected this race, we have a favorite that's involved in a very contentious pace duel, and we have a bunch of horses that are off the pace that have a potential to do something in a race at big odds. So that's the reason why we selected this race. Good luck. Anyway, which way you're playing it, and at least it's a starting point for making your selections, and hopefully this works out for you. If you have any questions about any of our products or how to use them, just send us an email, customer@optixeq.com, and we're open to anything, suggestions, improvements, anything. And we're pretty good at responding.